Hello, welcome to A Bold and Distant Future. This is episode 5, I think, of our ongoing series investigating the ideas surrounding the Dark Enlightenment, and it's a series that we're calling The Bright Endarkenment. We're very lucky to have Scooter, one of our voices here, lead us through some of the sort of the foundational ideas that have led up to this thing called the Dark Enlightenment. And this is episode 5, I think, right, Scooter?
Yeah, this is anarcho-capitalism part 3.
Great. Okay, great.
Or part 2. I'm a little confused.
So we're looking...
We did the theocrats, we did the objectivists, and we've already done 2 on anarcho-capitalism. This is going to finish it off.
Great. So how do Maslow's hierarchy of needs fit into that?
I'm glad you asked. So, I don't know. You're all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is pretty ubiquitous.
Yeah.
So, very, very quickly, for the purposes of the next slide, you'll notice that the bottom 2 are essentially basic survival, right? You have physiological needs: food, water, warmth, rest, housing. Didn't put health there. I'd put health there too. Safety needs, security and safety is a bit redundant, but we understand what that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is where most of us live. Certainly most of the people in the United States live. Constantly, particularly right now, there's serious concerns about food, water, warmth, rest, as well as safety and security. And then above that, is your intimate relationships and friends. And then above that is self-fulfillment. So that's where we live.
Mm-hmm.
Our friends at the top invert the pyramid so that their primary needs, because the physiological safety needs are taken care of by dint of, wealth. So when you get to a point where everything that is necessary to survival is taken care of, the pyramid inverts. And I got this, by the way, from somebody who did a video on Dungeons and Dragons, and he was talking about the Fae folks. In Dungeons and Dragons, the Fae would include, fairies, pixies, and the like. Basically everybody in the Lord of the Rings universe outside of the orcs. So for them, their primary concerns are self-esteem and self-actualization. And I would argue, as this guy does in his video, that these needs are felt to the same intensity and degree that the rest of us have towards food, water, and housing and so forth. That this is fundamental, that these needs, if they're not taken care of, can lead to a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Give me a word. What would it lead to?
Diminishment.
Diminishment is a sense of serious diminishment. So if we accept this as a truism, obviously I can't prove it, but I think we can, see this in terms of our own experiences, in our own relationships with people of wealth, that this seems to be true. It particularly seems to be true among the kids. If they suffer from lack of self-esteem, if they're not in a position to actualize what they feel their true person is, it becomes problematic, and the family send them off to art school.
I see.
But for the most part, the whole idea of maintaining wealth is that, first you got to make it, but then it belongs to the succeeding generations to keep it. And that becomes part of the package of self-actualization, is how do you maintain your family name and your family value. So
you're saying there's a different set of hierarchy of needs for the privileged classes?
Yep, that's exactly what I'm saying. And you can see it play out in the internal politics of the privileged classes. And by way of example, I present this guy.
I have seen that throne.
Yes. It's made of iron.
Yeah, And there was a line, God knows how long, of people waiting to sit on it and take their selfie or have somebody else take it.
Well, this guy has a selfie here. This is Tywin Lannister. You guys know Game of Thrones, I'm sure, right? Have you watched Game of Thrones?
I have not.
I'm in two minds about recommending it.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend it in order to understand the slide, but it is so perverse. It is a drag. And you're feeling about Westeros when you watch this. This is the one place on the planet, imaginary planet, if you will, where you would not want to be. Yeah. So anyway, Tywin Lannister is all about his legacy. Everything he does is concerned with maintaining and extending the influence of the House of Lannister. And towards that end, he does absolutely despicable things. He will massacre families, albeit families of other houses, other privileged people who are having issues with self-esteem and self-actualization, but he will murder them all nonetheless. At the very least, you should probably try to watch the Red Wedding episode. Yeah. Nice, fun, family-centered, entertainment.
How come I feel it's not very family-oriented, but I'll give it a shot.
Just look it up. I
need to watch it
studiously up until they murdered a little girl by setting her on fire. At that point, I decided I'm done. But it is graphic, and it can be absolutely horrific. The acting is incredible, at least up until the 8th season, so I'm told, like I said, I quit watching it. But Tywin makes this comment to his son, who he's attempting to bring up in the way of the Lannisters, where the Lannister name is paramount, and he says that the lion does not concern himself with the opinion of the sheep. And I think to a huge degree we can extrapolate from that and say that the privileged do not concern themselves with the opinion of the sheep. Right before I got on this show, I was reading about some children's hospital, I think it was up in the Northwest, in an affluent neighborhood. And the neighbors kept complaining about the helicopter noise because, for serious emergency cases, they bring sick kids to the hospital for sick children via helicopter. And the neighborhood rose up against it because it's too noisy, and they now have to drop the kids off at some other locale and bring them in via ambulance. And to me, that right there is the lion not concerning himself with the opinion of the sheep. Everybody else would look at that and say, this is just absolutely ridiculous and incredibly cruel, but the lion does not concern himself with the opinion of the sheep. Okay, so there's that.
I just looked it up. The episode that portrays the Red Wedding is episode 9. It's called The Reigns of Castamere.
Yeah, read up on what the Reigns of Castamere is all about. You can just look that up online. The song references the aforementioned massacre of a family. Anyway, so there, on the one hand, you're up there, you're a lion. Unless you're talking about democracy, in which case you are now a sheep. This is actually, I see this everywhere on the right when talking about democratic values, democracy as a thing itself. Democracy is a sheep and 5 wolves deciding what to have for dinner.
Yeah,
you see this from time to time, and so yeah. You can be a wolf or you can be a sheep, depending on the context. So we're going to be talking about libertarianism, paleo/anarcho-libertarianism, and how it becomes the sort of a building block to oligarchy. And to that end, we're talking about a guy named Hans Hermann Hoppe. That's him in the T-shirt with the Mises logo on it. And that's Murray Rothbard sitting next to him. And remember, we talked a bit about Murray Rothbard in our last couple of little sessions here.
Yeah.
So if you're curious about that, if somebody is just coming in fresh, just go watch those episodes. Anything you need to know about Murray Rothbard is there. In any case, Hans Hermann Hoppe was kind of a disciple of Murray Rothbard, and is seen by some as being kind of a successor to Murray Rothbard. So what about Hans? First of all, the guy's hugely popular. I just did a kind of screenshot of YouTube videos having to do with Hoppe. He's that second one. He's standing in front of a Mises Institute logo. We talked about the Mises Institute briefly.
Mm-hmm.
He's perceived as probably the foremost apostle of what we've been calling anarcho-capitalism, or more precisely paleo-libertarianism. He says this: democracy is incompatible with private property. And just sort of let that kind of sink in for half a moment and play with that. And then he says, democracy has nothing to do with freedom. Remember, these guys have a definition of freedom that is profoundly property-centric. Democracy is oops, went ahead one. But you can sort of take that in. That's a book he wrote. Democracy has nothing to do with freedom. Democracy is a subset of communism, and rarely in history of ideas has it been anything else. So we're talking about communism. I do not understand that.
It's very strange. It's like war is peace or something. It's backwards. I don't get it. Am I the only one?
You're not the only one.
Well, in his view, democracy is a gateway drug to social democracy. And social democracy and communism are basically equivalent. They're essentially the same thing. Communism is the more extreme version of social democracy. Social democracy, of course, is when you take the resources of a group and you put it to use for the benefit of the group. Right?
i.e. you build police forces and you deliver mail and you form schools and all that other stuff that is part of that equation, I assume.
Yeah, you set up national parks, you support infrastructure.
What the hell? Who needs that stuff? Let's get rid of it.
Well, he would suggest that you're absolutely correct. It is to be gotten rid of. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but he suggests that the ideal society is something far closer to Westeros, where you have property rights granted in such a way that certain people become more powerful, then it becomes war of all against all, but he doesn't see it that way.
You only have property rights in so much as you are armed.
He would probably agree with that, too. It's definitely pro-Second Amendment.
Yeah, that sounds great, man. Let's do it.
What is this thing called? The tyranny of the masses. That's like, is that relating? I mean, tyranny of the masses is what? Where the dominant group, the biggest group of people call the shots. That's democracy. But that's what he's against. He's against people voicing their opinions and having a say in how society is constructed and run.
Well, remember, he's a libertarian. He believes in freedom of speech. You can talk about what you want society to be all you want, just so long as you don't enact it. But yeah, he wants the privatization of all government, what is currently government services. So that would cover the police, that would cover the mail, that would cover infrastructure, that would, national parks wouldn't exist as such anymore. Now, all of the stuff that relies on public funding would cease to be. It would depend on private funding, and hence private ownership.
Hard to imagine.
Yeah. It's a real romantic vision, isn't it?
I don't know about...
You bet.
It seems pretty bleak. I mean, you just seem like you're a voiceless cog in a machine that doesn't like you,
Well, remember, his feelings about government is that it is a machine that doesn't like you. You can't forget that half of anarcho-capitalism is anarcho. It is essentially anarchism. It's just not the anarchism we are used to. It's anarchism in support of capitalism. So he wrote this book. I haven't read it. I've read bits of it. It's not cheap. I went to go look, see if I could, obtain it. And it's more money than I'm willing to spend. But it's called Democracy, the God That Failed: The Economics of Monarchy, Democracy, and Natural Order. And in that book, let me see what the next slide is. I'll just go right through this. So Hoppe's central claim is that democracy isn't merely imperfect. Its incentives are civilizationally corrosive. It speeds up time preference, present tense living, truth, dissolves borders, supports the welfare war state, weakens the very institutions, family, church, property, inheritance, that make whatever that is possible. The God fails because its worship requires us to forget how people really behave. This is another piece of this. Libertarians basically see democracy as unnatural. So his positive horizon is what he calls the natural order. Patchwork of jurisdictions grounded in private property, voluntary covenant, and natural elites. People and houses that have proved reliable over time, like the House Lannister. He contrasts both monarchy and democracy with this more centralized, non-monopolistic order. Christians will recognize much here that harmonizes with older Christendom. I'm kind of circling back to that first episode about the theocrats. Elders at the gate, guilds, parishes, common law, subsidiarity in practice rather than slogans. Subsidiarity is part of Catholic social teaching, and it is being altered somewhat here, where we're talking about something that damn near is a caste system, that each group within a population has their place and their purpose, which is subsidiary to the group above them. And at the very top, of course, are the Brahmins. Interesting side note, one of the slang terms for the very rich in Boston were the Boston Brahmins. Just throwing that out there. And he says, or he suggests that we do need visible authority that is not constantly redefined by plebiscite. How that fits in with libertarianism is a bit of a jump, but he makes it. He suggests that monarchy is preferable to democracy. And the reason that he does so is the monarch has a vested interest in his property, the property being the state and the people. So the monarch will naturally do what is best to maintain the property and hopefully, by dint of that, the people. So he needs an authority capable of defending borders, adjudicating disputes, chastening vice, without pretending that 5 wolves and a sheep voting on dinner equals justice.
Yeah. I gotta love that.
Okay. So you can now see explicitly out of the anarcho-capitalists / paleo-libertarians this move to support some form of oligarchy. It is counterintuitive, but there it is. And he has some intellectual backing. That's Socrates, by the way. Socrates made a distinction between intellectual democracy, where the informed and educated citizens made decisions, and birthright democracy, that should ring a few bells, where anyone could vote regardless of knowledge or wisdom. So who are those informed and educated citizens? Those are the ones who can, afford to be informed and educated. And as for everybody else,
tough luck.
Pretty much. He feared that birthright democracy would inevitably lead to demagoguery and disaster. For Socrates, democracy was only ever as good as the education system that surrounded it. So, circling back, what are they trying to do right now? They're trying to get rid of birthright democracy.
Pretty much. And they're certainly making a huge attempt to dumb down whatever education is left.
Yes. Yeah, that's part of it, too. So, that's Socrates. There's also Plato. There will be no end to the trouble of states or of humanity itself. Philosophers become kings in this. Now, this is a quote, actually. The other one was not. There will be no end to the troubles of states or humanity itself till philosophers become kings in this world, or till those we now call kings and rulers really and truly become philosophers. The political power and philosophy thus come into the same hands. You see a sort of parallel with what we're seeing coming out of the Dark Enlightenment?
Yeah, I do. This is old. This has been thought through before, huh?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's ancient and underpins a lot of what happened in subsequent Western civilization. I mean, you draw a line from this to the divine right of kings, or the great chain of being. So the rise of democracy also brought up the rise of total state, so the idea of democratic liberalism is the way to defeat the total state. As a way to defeat the total state seems distant and impossible. The writer who changed my view on the subject is Hans Hermann Hoppe. He is the heir to the Austrian School of Economics. If you know Ludwig von Mises, Mises's heir was Murray Rothbard. Hoppe is Rothbard's heir. Hoppe wrote a book called Democracy, the God That Failed, which he opens the possibility of considering life before a revolution as legitimate. Essentially, revolutions act as cults. They delegitimize everything outside of them. The person that said that is Curtis Yarvis. So the very first time here, we're drawing a direct line from one of these streams to the Dark Enlightenment. Curtis Yarvis claims Hoppe as his own prophet.
And Curtis Yarvin he's one of the main voices in the Dark Enlightenment, isn't he?
He and Nick Land. Yeah. That's it. Those are my slides.
Wow. So will we get into Curtis Yarvin and Nick Land's writings and thoughts in the last episode or the next episode?
Oh, I'm saving Dark Enlightenment for the last. We've got two more streams I want to discuss. I could get into one of them now if you want to take the time.
I think this is a good place to kind of pause. I hadn't heard
Particularly as it applies to technology, and specifically as it applies to AI.
That seems counterintuitive but interesting. Well, I look forward to talking more about that in the upcoming episodes.
Okay.
And I'm learning a lot, and it's giving me lots of ideas to go out and research and explore. So I appreciate the shorter, condensed episodes of this kind. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Scooter, that listened today to A Bold and Distant Future, and we'll see you again. Bye-bye.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers. Take care.